Hell's Kitchen is known for pressure, precision, and perfection, but not everyone survives the heat. This video explores the biggest cooking disasters that shocked audiences and changed the course of the competition forever. From critical judgment errors to unforgettable kitchen failures, these moments prove how one mistake can cost everything. Under intense time pressure and high expectations, even skilled chefs can crumble. Each disaster highlights the importance of focus, discipline, and teamwork in a professional kitchen. If you enjoy intense culinary competition, dramatic failures, and lessons from high-stakes cooking, this deep dive into Hell's Kitchen's most unforgettable disasters is a must-watch. What happens when elite chefs face a kitchen where a single second, a single decision, can end everything? Welcome to Hell's Kitchen, a place where pressure isn't just intense, it's unforgiving. In this video, you'll uncover the biggest cooking disasters that didn't just shock viewers, but silently changed careers and outcomes forever. You'll learn how small mistakes spiral into major failures, why confidence can become a weakness, and what really breaks chefs under extreme pressure. Stay till the end to discover the hidden lessons behind these unforgettable moments, because in Hell's Kitchen, perfection is expected, mistakes are punished, and there is absolutely zero margin for error. Before we talk about the biggest cooking disasters themselves, it's important to understand the invisible forces that create them. Time pressure in Hell's Kitchen isn't just about cooking faster, it's about thinking clearly while the clock is actively working against you. Every second matters, and hesitation can be just as dangerous as a wrong decision. Chefs are required to plan, execute, and adapt instantly, often while handling multiple tasks at once. This constant race against time slowly wears down even the most confident competitors, pushing their mental limits far beyond a normal kitchen environment. Mental stress builds the moment expectations collide with reality. Chefs enter believing skill alone will carry them through, but pressure exposes weaknesses that training cannot always fix. The fear of failure, public criticism, and the knowledge that one mistake can end the journey creates a heavy psychological burden. Under stress, the brain shifts into survival mode, making it harder to process instructions, recall techniques, or notice small details. What would normally be a simple adjustment suddenly feels overwhelming, and that mental overload becomes the first crack in focus. Before we talk about the actual errors, we have to look at how focus slowly slips away under pressure. Distractions pile up: noise, urgency, self-doubt, and constant evaluation. When attention fragments, chefs begin to rush steps, skip checks, or rely on assumptions instead of observation. A dish might look light at a glance, but without full focus, critical flaws go unnoticed. This is where time pressure quietly turns into a trap, forcing speed at the cost of awareness. Losing focus doesn't happen all at once. It unfolds in moments. A missed instruction leads to confusion, confusion leads to hesitation, and hesitation leads to panic. Once panic sets in, decision-making becomes reactive rather than controlled. Chefs start chasing time instead of managing it, which only increases mistakes. Mental stress amplifies every setback, making recovery harder with each passing second. Confidence erodes, communication suffers, and the kitchen begins to feel hostile rather than structured. As pressure intensifies, even experienced chefs can fall into tunnel vision. They fixate on one task while ignoring the bigger picture, unaware of how their actions affect the team or the service flow. Time pressure demands balance, but stress pushes extremes, either rushing blindly or freezing entirely. In this state, focus isn't just lost, it's replaced by instinct, and instinct under stress rarely leads to precision. The consequences unfold rapidly, shaping moments that define success or failure long before the final outcome is clear. Before we talk about the most dramatic failures, it's essential to understand how basic techniques begin to break down under extreme pressure. In professional kitchens, fundamentals are everything, yet stress has a way of stripping chefs back to their weakest habits. Simple actions, temperature control, seasoning balance, timing can suddenly feel uncertain. When pressure rises, muscle memory clashes with anxiety, and techniques that once felt automatic require conscious thought. That hesitation alone can be enough to disrupt rhythm, turning routine preparation into a source of risk. Basic technique failure often starts with overcorrection. A chef senses something might be wrong and reacts to aggressively adjusting heat too fast, rushing plating, or altering a dish without fully assessing it. These small missteps compound quickly. Instead of stabilizing the situation, each rushed adjustment introduces new problems. Under time constraints, there's rarely space to reset, so chefs continue forward with flawed execution, hoping it will somehow work out. This is where technical errors stop being isolated and become structural. Before we talk about judgment itself, we need to see how stress distorts perception. Mental fatigue narrows focus, making it harder to evaluate options objectively. Chefs may ignore clear warning signs or misread feedback, believing speed will compensate for precision. Poor judgment often appears confident on the surface, but underneath, it's driven by fear of falling behind. Decisions are made not because they are correct, but because they feel fast, safe, or familiar even when the situation demands caution. Wrong decisions frequently come from prioritizing the wrong goal. Instead of focusing on quality, chefs focus on survival, finishing first, avoiding attention, or copying others without understanding context. This leads to shortcuts that compromise fundamentals. Techniques are skipped, checks are avoided, and assumptions replace verification. What could have been corrected early becomes locked in, turning a manageable issue into a defining mistake. As pressure continues, judgment deteriorates further through emotional interference. Frustration, embarrassment, and self-doubt cloud reasoning, pushing chefs toward impulsive choices. Rather than pausing to reassess, they double down on errors, convinced that changing course would waste time. In reality, that refusal to slow down often costs more. Technique and judgment are inseparable in these moments. When fundamentals fail, decisions follow, and once decisions fail, recovery becomes increasingly unlikely. Before we talk about the visible chaos that unfolds in the kitchen, it's important to understand how miscommunication quietly sets everything in motion. In a high-pressure environment, words carry weight, and timing matters just as much as clarity. A single misunderstood instruction can send an entire team in the wrong direction. When communication breaks down, chefs begin operating on assumptions rather than information, creating gaps that grow wider with every passing moment. What starts as a small delay or confusion quickly multiplies across stations. Miscommunication often stems from stress and noise rather than intent. Raised voices, overlapping commands, and rushed explanations blur critical details. Chefs may hear instructions but interpret them differently, especially when they are already overloaded mentally. Without confirmation or feedback, errors move forward unchecked. Tasks are duplicated, others are neglected, and timing falls out of sync. In a kitchen built on precision, even minor communication failures can disrupt the entire workflow. Before we talk about leadership itself, we have to recognize how its absence magnifies these issues. Strong leadership creates structure, prioritizes tasks, and keeps everyone aligned under pressure. When leadership is weak or inconsistent, teams lose direction. Chefs hesitate, waiting for guidance that never comes, or worse, they make independent decisions that conflict with the team's needs. Without a clear voice to unify efforts, coordination becomes fragmented. Coordination issues often appear subtle at first. Stations work in isolation, focusing only on their own output rather than the overall service. Timing mismatches emerge. One part of a dish is ready too early, another too late. Instead of moving as a unit, the team drifts into individual survival mode. This lack of synchronization increases tension, making communication even more strained as frustration replaces cooperation. As pressure builds, leadership gaps become more damaging. No one takes responsibility for course correction, and small problems escalate unchecked. Chefs may avoid speaking up, fearing blame or conflict, which further deepens miscommunication. In these moments, silence can be as destructive as shouting. Coordination depends on trust and clarity, and when both are missing, the kitchen becomes reactive rather than controlled, setting the stage for mistakes that feel sudden but have been forming all along. Before we talk about the consequences that unfold under pressure, it's important to examine how overconfidence begins to shape behavior in the kitchen. Experience is often seen as a shield. I believe that years of practice can override any situation. While experience brings skill, it can also create blind spots. Chefs who rely too heavily on their past success may stop actively listening, assuming they already understand what is required. In an environment where expectations shift constantly, that assumption becomes dangerous. Experience-based confidence often leads to selective attention. Instructions are heard but filtered, with chefs adjusting them based on personal preference or habit. Instead of following guidance precisely, they interpret it through their own methods, believing their approach will be faster or better. This is where instructions begin to lose authority. Small deviations seem harmless at first, especially when time is tight, but they slowly separate execution from expectation. Before we talk about ignoring instructions directly, we need to understand how pressure reinforces this mindset. Stress creates urgency, and urgency pushes chefs to default to what feels familiar. Experience becomes a shortcut for decision-making, replacing careful evaluation with instinct. While instinct can be powerful, it doesn't always align with the specific standards being demanded. When instructions are ignored, even subtly, dishes begin to drift away from what is required. The results of this behavior compound quickly. One ignored detail affects timing, another alters blends, and suddenly the entire workflow is misaligned. Because the chef believes in their experience, they may dismiss feedback or fail to recognize the mistake until it's too late to correct. This resistance to adjustment isn't arrogance, it's a psychological defense against uncertainty. Admitting the need to change feels like admitting failure. As pressure continues, over-reliance on experience isolates chefs from their team. Communication narrows, collaboration weakens, and trust erodes. Others may hesitate to intervene, assuming the experienced chef knows best. In reality, experience without adaptability becomes a liability. Instructions exist to create consistency, and when they are ignored, even the most skilled hands can produce results that fall short, driven not by lack of talent but by misplaced confidence. Before we talk about the moment that defines everything, it's important to understand how fragile progress really is in a high-stakes competition. Success is built slowly through consistency, discipline, and trust, yet it can unravel in seconds. One mistake small on the surface can shift perception instantly. In an environment where standards are uncompromising, there is little separation between a minor error and a career-changing outcome. The pressure ensures that every action carries weight far beyond its immediate impact. A single mistake rarely exists in isolation. It often arrives after a sequence of subtle issues: fatigue, hesitation, misjudgment that finally collide. When that critical error happens, the atmosphere changes. Confidence drains, urgency spikes, and awareness narrows. What once felt manageable suddenly feels overwhelming. The competition doesn't pause, and there is no more time to recover emotionally. Chefs must continue performing while internally processing the realization that everything may already be slipping away. Before we talk about elimination itself, it's essential to recognize how momentum works in these environments. Positive momentum creates trust and tolerance, while negative momentum removes both. After a major mistake, scrutiny intensifies. Every following action is evaluated more harshly, every delay more noticeable. The margin for recovery shrinks rapidly, not because skill disappears, but because perception has shifted. The journey from competition to elimination is often silent rather than dramatic. It unfolds through loss of confidence, reduced communication, and growing self-doubt. Chefs may become overly cautious or desperately aggressive, neither of which restores balance. Decision-making becomes reactive, driven by fear of making another mistake rather than confidence in technique. This internal struggle is rarely visible, yet it shapes every movement and choice that follows. As the pressure peaks, the weight of that single mistake grows heavier. It influences posture, tone, and timing, altering how the chef is perceived by others. Even strong performance afterward may struggle to erase the impact. In a system built on consistency, one defining error can quietly redirect an entire journey, transforming potential into departure without warning or delay. Before we talk about success or failure in a professional kitchen, it's essential to understand the principles that quietly govern everything behind the scenes. Discipline is not about restriction. It's about consistency under pressure. It shows in how chefs organize their space, manage their time, and repeat techniques with precision no matter how intense the environment becomes. Without discipline, even talent loses direction, and small lapses begin to accumulate in ways that are difficult to reverse once service is underway. Preparation is where discipline takes physical form. Long before any pressure peaks, preparation determines how smoothly a kitchen operates. It involves understanding ingredients, anticipating challenges, and setting systems in place that reduce uncertainty. When preparation is lacking, chefs are forced to improvise, and improvisation under stress often leads to error. Well-prepared chefs move with purpose, while unprepared ones spend valuable time reacting rather than executing. Before we talk about humility, we need to recognize why it matters in a space driven by ego and reputation. Humility allows chefs to accept feedback without resistance and adapt without defensiveness. In professional kitchens, learning never stops, and those who believe they already know enough limit their own growth. Humility creates openness and awareness that perfection is a pursuit, not a guarantee. The reality of a professional kitchen is relentless. Standards do not adjust for emotion, fatigue, or personal struggle. Discipline keeps chefs aligned with expectations, preparation gives them tools to survive pressure, and humility allows them to improve rather than collapse under criticism. These qualities work together, shaping how chefs respond when things go wrong. Without them, even minor challenges can feel overwhelming. As pressure builds, the kitchen reveals truth. Skill becomes visible through repetition, mindset shows in reaction, and character emerges in response to adversity. Discipline, preparation, and humility are not optional traits. They are survival mechanisms. In this reality, success is less about brilliance and more about control, awareness, and respect for the process that defines professional cooking. Why are mistakes in house kitchens so unforgettable? Because they reveal the true cost of pressure, expectation, and ambition colliding in one unforgiving space. Every hour carries a lesson not just about cooking, but about discipline, decision-making, and mental strength. For food and competition lovers, these moments offer more than drama. They show how excellence is built and how easily it can break. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the realities behind high-stakes kitchens, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more insightful content. Stay curious, stay hungry, and keep learning from every challenge.